So inflation, we use inflation when we're talking about a measurement of how an economy is performing. So like the Australian economy, if it's got a high inflation rate or a low inflation rate, and we can use that to compare across different countries. So inflation is the rise in prices within an economy and is generally measured as a percentage. And in Australia, we call it the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. By looking at the CPI, or inflation rate, we can estimate the cost of goods sometime in the future, or what the cost of goods will be sometime in the future. And to estimate the future price of an item 1 year ahead, we would increase the price of the item just by that rate of inflation. But if it was 2 years, we'd have to do 2 years worth of inflation. So it's like if you buy something in the 1980s, like an icy pole, it might have been 30 cents, whereas now in 2013 it could be 90 cents or $1. And that's a direct result of inflation. It's the same product, it's just costing more money. So one thing you do have to be able to do is you have to be able to work out what the cost of these goods could be sometime in the future. So in this first worked example, this is the simple version of inflation. So it's over 1 year. It gets a little bit more complicated. We have to use compound interest if it's over more than 1 year. But for 1 year, we use the simple interest formula. So in this question, the cost of a new car is $68,000. If the inflation rate is 6%, estimate the price of the car after 1 year. So the important information, we know the current price, we know the interest or the inflation rate, and we know that we're after 1 year. So the first thing you should do is write down the formula you're going to be using. So to find the future price, we need the current price plus 6% of the current price. Substitute the known values in. So we know that the current price is $68,000, so we substitute that in there. We know that 6% is the same as 6 over 100, or 6 divided by 100, and we know that we have to times it by the current price. So all that goes into the formula. Then in this next step, all they've done is completed this part of it, added them together and got the last answer. Then they have written it as a statement. Now the reason you write it as a statement is because there's no dollar signs in that 72,080, and when you make a statement like that, it's actually a really nice way to round off what you're doing. So the question was, the cost of a new car is $68,000. If the inflation rate is 6%, estimate the price of the car after 1 year. And then we've answered that question by saying the price of the car after 1 year is $72,080. So that's the simple version of inflation. The slightly more complicated, of course, uses compound interest, and that's what we'll show you on the next screen. So a slightly more complicated question might look like this. The cost of a widescreen HD and plasma TV is $4,999. If the average inflation rate is 4%, estimate the cost of the TV after 5 years. So I always circle the important information. So they're my numbers that I'm going to have to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the compound interest formula. And then over here I'm going to say, well, my P is going to be 4999, my R is going to be 4, and my N is going to be 5. So substituting all those in, A equals 4999 times by 1 plus 4 over 100 to the power of 5, which equals out at, and you could do the other steps in here, but I'm just going to go straight to the endpoint, 608.2.047,859. Now once I've got that, I go back up to my question and I read where it says to the nearest dollar. And so I would say in this, the cost of the television after 5 years, I should write it, the cost of the TV after 5 years is $6,082, and there's my answer. So it's just if there's more than 1 year, you're going to have to use the compound interest formula.